Hello, everyone. Sometimes we love people so much that we just see the best in them, and that's really beautiful. But it can sometimes lead us into situations where we stay longer than we should, where we minimize behaviors, where we have blind spots and don't take care of ourselves or put other people's needs above our own. And there's a reason for this. I mean, as children, when we're born into this world, we look at our parents and we just think, wow, this person, I love them so much. They are God. They become God. And they need to become God because we need to make sure that we feel secure. And by creating gods out of our human parents who are human, so they're not gods, but we do that anyway because we need to feel secure. And so there is this seeing the best in our parents, minimizing anything that maybe they're doing which isn't in our best interests or that might be selfish or in some circumstances dangerous. We just do it anyway because we want to feel secure and it's self-soothing. Seeing your parents as God, and we do this as children, creates a womb-like experience outside of the womb. And it is a form of self-care and it manages our cortisol levels growing up. And sometimes, our parents do things and that would really wound the little child. The child might feel very insecure, and the cortisol levels would rise to a point where it wouldn't be good for that little child's body to have such high cortisol levels throughout its childhood because it can't escape. There's nowhere to go. And when there's nowhere to go, there's a way of just creating a womb-like experience and seeing the best, and sometimes even repressing any behaviors that have caused us harm. And, a lot of us haven't had too many memories of our parents doing us harm, and some of us will have had memories of our parents doing us harm. But regardless, there's a spectrum of the harm, but regardless, the child idealizes the parents, creates gods out of the parents. And then as we grow older, as we move around in the kingdom, we might notice we have certain triggers when people speak to us a certain way, or when things don't go the way we planned, or we might find that we're attracted to people that maybe don't have our best interests in mind. And as we grow older, we might notice, oh, I keep dating that type of person. Maybe there's some resemblance to my mother or my father energetically. And we start to collect information as we move around in the relative world and realize, oh, this might have something to do with the parenting. And I'm not saying parents are bad. I'm saying parents are human. Nobody in the kingdom is perfect. Nobody in the kingdom is all knowing, God like, never makes a mistake, never says anything wrong, squeaky clean. That's just impossible. When you come into a body, regardless of whether you're a parent, regardless of whether you're a yogi and have never had children, regardless of whatever you are inevitably going to say things that hurt people. You're inevitably going to have good days, have bad days. You're inevitably going to have some form of ignorance. That's just part of the human experience, and there's a spectrum of that. And so we're all off the hook. But we do notice when we move around in the kingdom, if we have certain triggers and patterns and we become aware of them, and a lot of it might come because we're starting to mature and we're starting to drop the parental figure as God and then find out a new connection with God, a connection with something that's non human. And there is a non physical realm which is perfect, that will not say anything bad to you, that will not give you misinformation about yourself, that will not confuse you. And we make that connection to, we can call it our higher self. We might use a bridge. It might be Jesus. It might be Mohammed. It might be a guru. It might be something that we project as having these divine, ethereal, non physical qualities. We might temporarily use that as a bridge. But we're moving from seeing the parental figure as God to something more accurate, a more accurate representation of what God actually is. And at some point, that will collapse and we'll realize we are God. And that God is moving through everybody in the kingdom, and there's lessons that are learned. And so it's a really, really interesting experience as we mature and we let go of our parental figures as gods, and then we reconnect with God. Sometimes it's it's perceived temporarily as external, whether it's a picture or a statue or somebody, maybe an avatar or Jesus or Muhammad or anything in your belief system that works for you. And then as we rise up in consciousness, the gap between the outside perceived God and yourself gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you realize, oh, I am God. God is within everything else. But when God enters into a physical kingdom, then you get these human personalities and you get, things that the personality likes and dislikes, and you get karma, which is action and reaction, and you get a temporary belief that you're separate when you're actually not. And then all of this creates this really interesting existence, and you get this churn of existence, and people bumping into one another and learning from one another and waking each other up and triggering each other to realize you are God. Ultimately, that's why it all kind of happens. It's like you ultimately get to that point, and it's not, you know, anything to do with narcissism. It's like, oh, Aruna, you're saying I am God. I can't say that. I'll be a narcissist if I say that. No, this is not narcissistic. This is accurate. It doesn't come with a sense of hubris. It doesn't come with a sense of being better than one another. That's not what this is. It actually, when you realize you are God, and God is in everything else and is working with you and is you, it's a humbling experience, because when you look into the eyes of somebody else, you see yourself. There's nothing but the self. And maybe this lands as an intellectual statement for some people, but maybe it will land for other people as something deeper than that. And I have talked about unrefined states of unity. even with people who just are looking into the eyes of a child or they're looking into the eyes of their pet and their heart space opens. And the reason the heart space is opening and the reason you feel expansive and empathetic when you look into the eyes of something you love is because you're seeing yourself in that external object, which happens not to be external at all. It's actually internal. There's illusion of external and internal um, at a certain stage, and then that collapses, and then there's no such thing as external and internal. We're all one. And so our parents are off the hook and we're off the hook. But there can be a stage where we're growing up as children, and in order to survive, and this is a shout out to people of dysfunctional families, um, some human souls come in and they choose to do a lot of heavy lifting in this lifetime and a lot of conscious expansion, and they might choose challenging situations, including a dysfunctional family. And there's no greater way to wake up to who you truly are is if you survive a dysfunctional family system, because there's so much there to transmute. You have to wake up. You have to realize who you are beyond your body. It's a great way to wake up. It's not always easy and it can come with a lot of suffering, but if you go deep enough into the suffering, it does get transmuted and then it burns itself out and you're just left with pure consciousness and bliss if you go deep enough into it. But people generally, they have fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses, so they don't want to go into it. They feel that if I go into the pain, I'm going to die. I can't handle it. It's going to dysregulate me. There's some fear. I want to run away. I want to fight. I don't want to be with these emotions. I want to distract myself. I want to try and please somebody else in the attempt to try and change them so they don't hurt me. So we fawn. And at some point, these systems, these survival strategies from childhood collapse because they don't work anymore. They work when you're a child, you can't get away from the household, so you might have to, well, you can't fight, but you can do the other survival mechanisms. You can't fight, but you can do the other survival mechanisms. So we fawn, we freeze, sometimes we deny that anything's going on. And there's a way that the body denies it, which is it can deny it so much that the memories actually get repressed. Sometimes they never actually arise. Sometimes they arise in adulthood. And seeing the best in people does minimize the shock. But there comes to a point where we need to come out of denial and stop seeing people as one-dimensional. Stop seeing our parents as all good. Stop seeing our gurus as all good. Stop seeing anybody in the kingdom that has a body as all good or all bad. We don't want to split people into good people and bad people. This is a very infantile way of seeing the world, and it's not accurate because nothing in the world is 100% good or 100% bad. Everything's a mixture, and there's a spectrum and people move along the spectrum, so it's very difficult to label somebody as bad because the cocktail can change and there's too many factors involved. Somebody can end a relationship or have somebody leave them, and that can change where they are emotionally and how they show up with other people. So they're not frozen. Somebody can change their job or they can get fired, and that can move how they show up in the world. Somebody can have an illness, that can change how they show up in the world. Somebody can start meditating, and that can change how they view themselves and show up in the world. Somebody can just be moving around and for no apparent reason, just something happens and they start to wake up. They can go for a walk in a forest. They can just come to some breaking point, or sometimes just because the vibe of the planet's rising, they just start to wake up and see patterns and do things differently. And we can never point a finger and say that person's stuck and never going to change. However, we do have common sense in the kingdom. We don't, meditate or have an awakening and then just think everything's going to be okay and we never need to set any boundaries with people anymore. We do always need to check in with ourselves. How do I feel when I'm interacting with this person? Do I get dysregulated when I'm around this person to the point where I can't work or I can't sleep or I can't do what I need to do in the kingdom? Can't fulfill my purpose? And if it gets to that point, well, the most spiritual thing to do is to consider, do I go low contact? What does that look like? Do I go no contact? What does that look like? And the heart space never really likes no contact because it likes to connect things. It doesn't like to cut things off. So if we do go no contact, we can always say, this no contact I can revisit in the future. But for now, that's what I need. And also, a really good question to ask is this: what would I need if I was going to be low contact? Would I need an agreement that, I will meet you while you're in the presence of the therapist, or I'll meet you in a public place? And also follow your intuition. Sometimes people get so caught up in their head about what somebody's saying about somebody else, about the past and what's happened. Follow your intuition. You know you can feel it when you feel safe or when there's danger. And a way of reconnecting with your intuition is to stop denying that you don't have it, is to start just asking yourself simple things. What what do I actually want to drink right now? I know I'm supposed to have my super healthy smoothie, but do I actually want my super healthy smoothie? Or hmm, do I want just an orange juice? Or do I want a cup of coffee? Like, what do I want? Because sometimes we get confused about what we want because we're doing what we think we should be doing. And this can move us away from our intuition, and we just want to ask ourselves, check in, what do I want? Am I tired? Do I actually want to go to the gym? Do I want to watch that movie? Or does my friend want me to watch that movie and I don't want to watch it? I'd prefer to watch a comedy. Always checking in, checking in, checking in, because there's a very practical element of life, and people often think that spirituality is all non-physical, ethereal, and that can lead to some ungrounding. Everything in life, when seen clearly and interacted with from awareness, is a spiritual process. So, checking in with oneself and deciding whether one actually wants to watch this movie or that movie is a spiritual process. Asking questions and inquiring, why did I feel that way, is a spiritual process. Setting a boundary with somebody with love is a spiritual process. And this brings me on to boundaries and leaving or staying. And sometimes what I've noticed with clients is they try and convince themselves that they hate a person in order for them to get the energy to leave that person. They think, I can't leave unless I write a list of all the horrible things that that person's done to me. And I wind myself so much up that I can say, F you, you effer, you did this, you did this, you did this, I've had enough, I'm leaving. And yet it's healthy to release anger, but there is another way. And the other way understands that everybody is on a human journey, is struggling on their human journey, does have stress that they may not be able to manage. That affects their personality. Hurt people hurt other people. It's not personal. Hurt people just hurt other people. So if you're around people who've been hurt, they're likely to try and hurt, whether it's maliciously or not. That's just seeing things clearly. Do not take it personally. And hating the person isn't going to help. Hating the person just is going to raise your adrenaline and cortisol and hurt you. And so we're trying to minimize the hurt cycle. And so understanding that nothing wrong is happening, it's just the nature of reality that hurt people, and we're all wounded little kids to a certain degree. There's a spectrum of the wounding. And if somebody's very wounded, they will lash out. Their personality will change because of it. Their empathy might um, change, and in certain cases, exit. Then you're in a dangerous situation that you would probably want to go no contact with if the empathy's not there. But it's not personal. It's just not personal. And so we leave with love. We set a boundary with love. We can say to ourselves, I cannot change this person. I do not need to change this person. The only person that I can change is myself. And then we do everything from within the self. And then if we do the U-turn, and instead of lashing out outside of ourself, we go inside and we make the internal changes and we focus on ourself, and we do it with love. Because when we love ourselves, we're just more loving to other people. So loving oneself leads to a more loving world. Loving oneself leads to a more loving world. And also setting a loving boundary helps the other person because you're no longer enabling them. And that can be very useful for them as feedback. It's not going to be useful feedback if you attack them, though, because then they will just get really, really entrenched in their perspective. So, love is the most powerful thing. Hate isn't as powerful as love. And so today, we're not going to be perfect. We're not always going to love everybody. We maybe have days where we hate people, or we de-stress, or we say things we don't mean. But we just recognize, oh, that was a stress release. I'm off the hook. Other people have stress releases. They're off the hook. Everybody's off the hook. And therefore, we're more able to love ourselves because we've let ourselves be off the hook. And then because we've let ourselves be off the hook, we can let other people be off the hook. And that is how we create a peaceful world, by giving everybody that grace. So thank you for listening. And I hope that you have a lovely day filled with grace and knowing that you're off the hook and knowing that everybody's off the hook. And let's set an intention to spread peace and love in the world and just have a moment's silence.